Let's turn now to the events out of the Middle East more broadly, and particularly the overthrow of the Assad regime. Joining me is the Australian Strategic Policy Institute Executive Director, Justin Bassi. Justin, this has been a massive week, really crept up on most, I think. It's surprised analysts, political leaders, governments around the world, the speed with which this happened.
Kieran, it absolutely did. Perhaps in hindsight, it shouldn't have. We are seeing the implications of Israel's degradation of Iran's capabilities, particularly the degradation of Hezbollah's capabilities. We're seeing what Ukraine has forced upon Russia in its fight against Russia. It has really meant that both Iran and Russia, that has propped up the Assad regime over the last decade, have just been unable to do so now. But still, the speed at which HTS, the opposition forces, got through to Damascus has surprised many.
Because normally the Hezbollah militia, others on behalf of Iran, Russian airstrikes, you would have seen from both sides, those allies of Syria or the Assad regime in Iran and Russia come to their help. They couldn't do that.
They couldn't do it. We're really seeing a major reshaping of the Middle East at the moment. And immediate positive news, obviously the end of the Assad regime, the brutal dictator used chemical weapons against his own people. We are seeing, as you said, the reduced influence at the moment of Iran and Russia, and understandable rejoicing from the Syrian people. There are the key question around all that positivity, Kieran, is what next? And there is a positive scenario that HTS, the main opposition group, seeks international legitimacy and becomes more pluralistic, which would be for the betterment of both the Syrian people and the region. Unfortunately, around all that, there are a series of possible negative scenarios that we go into another period of civil conflict, civil war, that HTS returns to its Islamist fundamentalist roots of al-Qaeda, and we see, interestingly, Russia and Iran, that has been wanting stability, interestingly, in Syria over these years, turn to what they do best at times, which is to become disruptors and to seek to destabilise the region. So we've got a lot to play out.
Is there some cause for encouragement from what you've heard from the incoming leadership?
HTS, of course, is a rebranded Nusra Front, trying to rebrand itself as a legitimate opposition force, and it will want to be a government force. There are some positives there, of course, and part of that, interestingly, is the leverage that the United States and other countries like Australia hold. We have prescribed HTS as a terrorist organisation following its rebranding from Nusra Front. What that means is that if HTS does want to seek international legitimacy, it will need to work with international partners, including the United States, to see if they can have that terrorist status removed. If that's the case...
But also for stability in their own country. We're talking about one of the most religiously and ethnically diverse countries on earth.
Yeah, and
whether you go from the Kurds to the Arabs to the Sunnis, it's a diverse place. Christians.
Very diverse, which of course can have some benefits if they all come together. But this is a major problem that we'll now face, is will these groups that have overthrown the Assad regime and will celebrate that collectively, will they now try and seek individual dominance? Will HTS return to an oppressive regime? And so we need to work out, are we headed down another civil conflict? And of course, the last time Syria headed down that civil conflict, we ended up with ISIS, the rise of ISIS. And that shows that it has real impact, not just on Syria and the region, but countries like Australia.
Finally, you, as I introduced you, you're the Executive Director of the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. It's a government, in part, funded by government, a think tank to help develop policy. There was a review done into government think tanks like yours. Where is that at? What are we going to hear from the government before Christmas?
My understanding, I've been told that it's likely that the government will release that review at the back end of next week, Kieran.
Christmas Eve.
Effectively Christmas Eve. It seems very odd timing to me. My understanding is the government has had this review since July, so it's coming up towards 5 months. Could have been released at any time. I think given what we've just talked about, the instability in the Middle East, you and I talk fortnightly about the latest geopolitical crisis. We've got war in Europe, war in the Middle East. We've got China pressing in this region. Now is a time for an increased focus on national security research, not less. So if we have any degradation or any reduction of support for an institution or research more broadly, that'd be bad. But also, as you say, Kieran, it seems very poor timing to head into summer holidays with that release, which doesn't allow for much scrutiny.
ASPI Executive Director Justin Bassi, we will scrutinise it at some point if it's in the new year. Regardless, we'll talk to you about it. So thank you, Justin. Appreciate it.